Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Arctic Circle, the mystical land of the northern lights and the midnight sun. Jonas and I were in this frozen wilderness to find the Yeti. But instead, we found a Karoq. The Skoda Karoq is a new compact SUV for those who want something smaller than the Kodiaq and still offers four-wheel drive. But does the electronic coupling all-wheel drive system make a difference out in the real world? We'll find out today.
Before we start talking about the exterior design, I thought I'd tell you guys a little bit of something that's me and Jonas, we're not so happy with. Thomas and Michelle right now are in Cape Town on the other side of the world driving the new Audi A7. While we love Finland, it's a great place to be and this car is a lot of fun. I mean, come on. Cape Town in the middle of summer, over there, all the beaches, and Jonas and I, where are we, Jonas? We're in the Arctic Circle. In fact, this is the official town of Santa Claus, Rovaniemi. But anyway, let's start talking about the front design of the Skoda Karoq. This is a great option for people who don't want that the size and the weight that comes with the Kodiaq. In the front, it does look similar to the Kodiaq, but it distinguishes itself with, for example, these horizontal headlights with the optional LEDs. The fog lamps as well are in a different shape. This is a downward slanting design as compared to the Kodiaq, which is a little bit more swept upwards. The other difference would be perhaps this little kink on the bumper, whereas in the Kodiaq it's all very horizontal over there. I remember talking to the designer of Skoda at the event for the new Octavia earlier last year, and he was telling me that they're really trying to focus on bringing a different face for each Skoda. So this is what follows with that philosophy. Of course, in the front we have the traditional Skoda grille, the wing-like design going up over here, as well as the large central power dome, so to speak, and a more off-road type, off-road-esque black lower part of the bumper. Here on the side profile, first of all, you will notice that the car has squared off wheel arches, again very similar to its siblings on the MQB platform, namely the Ateca and the Tiguan, but the cladding for the wheel arches are optional. You can get this in the same color as the body panel or the body of the car, or you can have these black cladding. I personally think you should get the cladding. The ones I've seen without it don't really look that nice because you still have the cladding down here, so it looks a little bit empty. The wheels start at 16 inches, which are standard. You can go all the way up to 19 inches optionally. We have 17-inch wheels on our car over here. I think they look big enough. I think they look nice. Again, not a very exciting, in-your-face, extravagant design. Sober, subtle, maybe bland to an extent, but that's a personal opinion. Of course, we have studded snow tires for this event, so you know the grip and traction is definitely much more suited for the snow from these tires. The mirror in this case are the same color as the body. They have a decent shape, and there's one design line, one crease from the front, which continues all the way to the back of the car. Similar again to the other Kodiaq and the other VW and Seat siblings, but brings a nice change in light and shadow when there is sun for this. Roof rails to add to that SUV character. And finally, a slightly rising shoulder line. The Karoq is 4.38 meters long and 1.8 meters wide, and it weighs about 1,400 kilograms. Here at the back, well, we have a flank of glossy black plastic along the side of the hatch, a very subtle, modest looking spoiler at the top. These rear lights, well, I think are a bit hit and miss. Again, it's my personal opinion. I don't really like the design and this cutout of the brake light jutting out this way. I think the Kodiaq's design is a lot more neater. But what do you guys think? Let me know. It does have the traditional Skoda Czech crystal-like design on the inside, which makes it look a little bit nice, that extra detailing. Very three-dimensional, very sculpted. Of course, you have the options of making it LED if you wish. Towards the side, we have Skoda badge, a wiper, camera for the reversing camera, and let's see, over here we have the Karoq and the 4x4 badge, and the lower part of the bumper is very simple, very minimalistic, just black, just a nice swooping around this around the bottom of the car. There is two tones of color. This is black up here, this is still the gray from the body, and down here there are no visible exhaust tips. So what do you guys think? Let me know. Let's take a look under the hood. There is no pneumatic strut. We have a regular rod to prop it open manually. The Karoq comes with a range of petrol and diesel engine options, starting off with a 1-liter 1.0 TSI, which is a 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, which makes 115 horsepower. Then there is the 1.5-liter TSI, which is a 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine, which makes 150 horsepower. That engine has active cylinder shutoff technology. In terms of diesel, you have a 1.6-liter TDI, which makes 115 horsepower as well. It's also a turbo 4. And then you have a 2-liter TDI with 2 states of tune, either 150 horsepower or 190 horsepower, like the one we have here. They're also both turbo 4-cylinder petrol engines. The 2-liter TDI is the only engine option which is available with the Haldex or Borg-Warner coupling 4-wheel drive system. The rest are front-wheel drive only. All of them can be had with either a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed DSG. And the 2-liter TDI also has the AdBlue technology, or the, I think it's called the ACR or ASR or something. Basically, it has a special filtration system with an additive which reduces the NOx emissions. Now, the lead diesel engines should be giving you better mileage. Unfortunately, we haven't had the chance to really test it because we've been only driving this off-road, and the real road driving we've been doing is such a small amount that we haven't been able to get a conclusive number. Right now, the trip meter is saying about 9.3 liters for 100 kilometers for a diesel engine, which is not the best. The claimed efficiency is around 5. I'm not so sure about that. We'll try that to test that some other time. But if you want a second opinion, watch Thomas's review of the 1.5 TSI petrol engine that he drove earlier. And guess where he drove it? In the Mediterranean paradise island in sunny Sicily in the summer. And where are we here today? Notice the pattern? Anyway, the other thing that we really wanted to cover in today's episode is, should I really go for a 4-wheel drive car, or should I just stick to front-wheel drive car? A very good question, because let's face it, this is an SUV in terms of a body type, in terms of the style and the driving position it gives you. It's not really meant to be an off-roader. It's more of a rough roader or a soft roader. So is a 4-wheel drive system really worth it? And first of all, this is a Haldex or Borg-Warner coupling 4-wheel drive system. On the rear axle, there is no transfer case, there is no central differential, there is no low range. But the truth is, most people, while they won't use 4-wheel drive on a regular driving circumstances, and they won't really venture out into the woods where it would make sense, the place where a 4-wheel drive system like this really does help out is here in the snow. So to test that out, we have a couple activities and challenges that we're going to put this car to see if 4-wheel drive, is it worth it? Let's find out. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the interior. And due to the circumstances of this event, we're going to have to change over from this steel grey colored Karoq to the velvet red Karoq. So here we go. We have the style trim level in the velvet red. So in case you guys want to know what color this car is, there you have it. And we have 2 keys. This is for the ventilator, so you can turn it off, or you can program this to heat the car up before you enter or cool it down, depending on the weather. So that's useful. And we have the regular key, the key fob for the Skoda Karoq. Very usual, very Skoda, very Volkswagen. And anyway, let's open the door. Door opens fairly wide. It's a fairly square door. Not much interesting going on or special, I would say, about the door. Its materials are pretty okay, I would say, on the top. A little bit softer. There is a interesting inlay over here. You can have different color schemes, of course. materials here are hard. This is a little bit more plush, but this is hard. All of this is again very hard. And it's quite boring, I think, but it's fine. I mean, Skodas are not really about extravagant design, I would say. So you have your window buttons and mirror buttons. This also has the optional Canton audio system. Sounds pretty good. Boot release switch over here for the automatic tailgate as you divert your attention towards the seat. Unfortunately, we have leather seats in this car, but you also have a lot of options for fabric and Alcantara. And I say unfortunate because we here in Autogefühl, we prefer to have animal-friendly materials. And of course, the truth is you don't really need to spend so much money on these extra seats. You can just keep the fabric or Alcantara seats instead. Down here we have memory buttons, lumbar support control, base, reclining. I'm getting really cold, so how about we hop inside and I'll tell you the rest of the interior from the seat. The steering wheel is very similar to the rest of Skoda design, very circular, has a nice grip, has a nice texture, indentations over here. This also has the optional heating system, which when you press the seat heater, it automatically turns on. There is no different steps, but I think it's especially very useful in cold situations like this. Paddle shifters for the DSG, audio controls and voice command over here, controls for your assistant systems and navigating in the menu. And finally, a push button start down here. The steering wheel column is also fully adjustable for reach and rake. And as we take a look down here, this is the regular instrument cluster. Yes, you will be getting the digital instrument cluster later on in this year. They said the first half of 2018 it will be available. And later on this year, you will also have the option for the more powerful 190 horsepower diesel engine as well. But this is also really good. There's the analog tachometer with the temperature gauge, an analog speedometer with your fuel gauge, and a large screen in the middle, which you can control with the button on the steering wheel. You have your assistant systems, so there's lane keeping assist, blind spot monitoring, rear traffic alert, front assist. And of course it gives you commands for your navigation, so you can quickly find the last destination, things like that. So overall, it's very useful. Of course, it's a little bit of getting used to. Audio controls, telephony, vehicle status for messages and service history, driving data for distance and your AdBlue range, which is what is the additive that is used to reduce the NOx on these top diesel engines. Range consumption, other useful information like that. And yeah, that's about it. So we're quickly going to jump into the other car that we have on test, because this has the virtual, or rather the digital dashboard. So as you can see, we have LED lights displaying the temperature and LED lights displaying the fuel rather than gauges. And there's a whole host of different views that you can control with the button on the steering wheel. Just a full navigation, some fuel and consumption, range, and you can of course change it to different, you can access the assistant system, you know, blind spot monitoring, rear traffic alert, all of these things are the same, but you also have different views that you can associate with these systems as well. Let's see, I think we can go to driving data, and now you have, you know, you don't have the navigation on this anymore. So yeah, I think it's pretty useful, and let me know what you think. Let's jump back into the other car now. So let's take a look at the touchscreen system. You have different options, including some Columbus systems, but as you can see, the glossy screen leaves a lot of fingerprints. But this is how most systems are nowadays. From the home screen, we can go to the menu. You have your radio, media, Skoda Connect, which gives you a online service for points of interest, updates in your route, traffic and weather. You also have connectivity with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay and MirrorLink. Apart from that, you have telephone, vehicle controls for tire pressure monitoring. You have some special things like off-road mode, which gives you a steering angle, elevation, some other information which I don't think is that useful, honestly. A green score for how well you're driving in terms of economy. And apart from that, we have the navigation system, I think, works fairly well. You also have the exit commands popping up on your dashboard, so it's really easy to use. Traffic updates, like I said. Then you have wireless internet, which we can connect. And yeah, that's about it. Air conditioning settings. There's one thing that I don't really like is the steering wheel heating button that has only one speed, and I can't really turn it on. So if I turn on my seat heater, it automatically turns on, and then I have to, there we go, if I push the button, then it's on here. Then I have to go into this menu to change how much of the steering wheel heater I want. It doesn't give it to me automatically on the home screen, for example. So apart from that, I think it's a good system. Over here you have your climate control units. You have two zones up here in the front, seat heaters and vent control. This is for the air care, so this is the ventilator. You can use your key, like I said earlier, to activate the system from outside, so you can heat the car up before you enter. Automatic shut off. This also has the parking assist, so it will steer the car and park itself in or out, parallel and perpendicular. Parking sensors, other buttons, a cubby hole down here with an inductive charger, 12-volt power socket, couple USB ports. This is the 7-speed DSG with the 4-wheel drive Haldex system. Gear fob, gear lever. I think it's very common. You can come down to D, flick it to the right and go up and down if you want, or flick it down to shift down from here, or you have the paddle shifters as well. You have multiple driving modes, so if I press it, you can see up here on the screen, we have Eco, Normal, Sport, Individual and Snow, like so. And if you come back down, we have a special off-road button as well. So in this case, we have the off-road mode is engaged. You can see that the hill descent control is also active, and it automatically pops up with that off-road screen that I was showing you guys earlier. Up here we have some buttons for your emergency assistance. So you can press this button and you will have somebody help you out. You go to a call center. You can also ask for some concierge services. And there's a lot of buttons over here for your lights. And we have a very large panoramic sunroof. Takes a while for it to open, so while it's opening, let's take a look down here in the central console. We have an armrest. Seems fairly stiff. It does wiggle a little bit. You can push this out of the way. You have some cubby holes, some beverage holders. And this is one of the simply clever features that Skoda has. You have these little indentations, which are supposed to help you open the water bottle with one hand, but it really depends on the bottle. Like this one, it doesn't work. I have another one over here. This bottom seems more contoured. Let's try. Does it fit? There we go. So now it's stuck in this, and if it's initially opened, I should be able to open it with just one hand. Okay, well that was a bit of a fail. Let's try it again. There we go. Now it's stuck, and voila. So it does work. It's pretty cool. I like these little simply clever features. And more storage spaces. This is pretty stiff up here. Nice padding as well. Back up top, this panoramic sunroof is open, as you guys can see. Very nice. You can also open 50% of this. So there's a dual pane kind of a system, so it's really nice and airy. Also very cold, so I'm going to close it up again. Let's take a look in the back seat. The door opens fairly wide actually, giving you easy access to put in child seats, for example. Also thanks to these ISOFIX seats, but these ISOFIX anchor points, but I don't like the fact that these little covers come out. What do I do with them? I want the hinging type. But I have a lot to talk about the seat. I'll get to that in a minute, because this is the optional VarioFlex seat. But the door, I think, is what I expected, which is just hard plastics everywhere. Just a little bit of padding on the armrest. But apart from that, let's get inside. Getting in is fairly easy, again thanks to the SUV stance and the higher ride height. I have, let's see, pretty decent knee room. The seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'8", or about 1.7 meters. Plenty of knee room. And because the seat, I've kept it a little bit higher since we're doing some off-road snow driving, I have ample space to kick my feet out under them. Headroom is also pretty good. Even with the panoramic sunroof, the intrusion that the mechanism has over here, of course, under the sunroof itself, there's a lot of headroom. We have some seat pouches behind the seats. Air conditioning vents, no climate zone, but seat heaters. Just for kicks, let's check out the central seat over here. Yeah, it's actually not bad. It's fairly flush and flat. I have there's a big central transmission tunnel, but I can still keep my feet on either side, so not such a bad thing. We have a 230-volt plug socket to perhaps charge your laptop, a 12-volt DC power socket, and a USB port. It's got you covered. Now let's go to, oh, by the way, there's also the optional iPad holder, so if you have kids and you want to keep them engaged, probably a good idea to get one of those. Anyway, VarioFlex seats. You can watch Thomas's review of the Karoq to see what he does, but I'm going to try to cover it as quickly as I can. First things first, you can slide these seats front and back individually, this one separately. This one doesn't slide, but this one on the edge also slides completely. Apart from that, if you pull this tab, you have, I think, 3 or 4 different levels which you can set the recline. Yeah, quite a lot of them. You can really put it all the way back, make it lounge-like. You can, of course, topple the seat, but wait, it gets better. You have a lever down here with which you can tumble it up. And Jonas, you might want to watch out. This is coming down. There we go. And then, by the way, this can be doubled as an armrest with cup holders, but we have a lever over here which you pull. And am I doing it right? No, not this. But anyway, the point is, we have these little red tabs down here, if you guys can see. So with these 2 red tabs, what I can do actually is remove the seat altogether. I have nowhere to keep it. It's going to get wet and snowy, so I'm going to put it back. But in concept, you can remove all 3 seats. You can also remove the middle seat like so. And if you do this, let me just put it back here in the trunk for now. So now what I can do with the side seat is I can clamp it towards, did I do it? No. Yes. I can slide the seat, as you can see, across this rail, so I can have it all the way out towards the door, or push it into the inside. And this system is not the best when you're in a hurry. There we go, finally. That took me forever. Are you still watching? Well, if you are, well, this is what I was trying to show you. You can put the seat further inwards. This one as well. I'm not going to try that. It'll take me forever. It'll be spring by the time I'm done with that. But now I have a lot more shoulder room, a lot more room in the middle, and it's easy access to the trunk. So, VarioFlex seats. Really hard to operate, but when you have the patience to do it, pretty useful. We have an electric tailgate, which should work when you swing your feet under it. I don't really know if you have to do it on the left side or the right side, if it has to be 2 times, or just kicking it around, but you can look it up. There's a button as well, which will lift the tailgate up. Now we have 521 liters of storage space, which is pretty good. But let's remember, we have these VarioFlex seats, and with these seats, if you take them down, if you have the patience and you know how to do it, unlike me and you're not a dummy, then you get 1,810 liters of storage space. It's pretty much like a van in that case. In the boot, we have a lot of these fun, useful, simply clever Skoda things. We have this optional rubber mat. There is cubby holes and tether points for your first aid kits. Some hooks which you can unlock and move around like this on the railing and then flick it down to lock. Very useful. 2 on this side, 2 on that side. 12-volt power socket. A flashlight which you can pull out or you can leave it inside and it will turn on. Parcel shelf tray as well. Unfortunately, while all of this stuff is simply clever, there are some simple omissions, like there is no tabs to pull the seats down. You're gonna have to detach this over here and then remove this altogether. And now you have, I guess, access to the middle seat, which you can fold down like that. But for the other two, you're forced to go to the side.
What is the benefit of these kinds of four-wheel drive systems? Because like we've discussed, this is not really a 4x4. There is no transfer case, there is no central differential. Even though this has electronic locking differentials, they're more brake-based and not really a locking, fully locking differential mechanically. But what is the real use? You know, these are not off-roaders in the true sense. You're not really going to be able to take this car off on you know, rock climbing or to Moab or things like that, but it definitely helps, especially in the snow. And to demonstrate that, now we're going to put this Karoq with the 190 horsepower diesel engine, the 2-liter TDI, with the all-wheel drive, the Haldex system that it has. We're going to pit it against a Skoda Superb with the 1.4 TSI, which has 150 horsepower. It's a petrol engine, but importantly, it's only front-wheel drive. Yes, I know now the engine outputs might be different, but the petrol engine, you know, delivers, can rev out really high, whereas this has a lot more torque. And we'll see how the changes in the weight also helps. But the important thing is this will help us understand the benefits of this kind of a four-wheel drive system on the snow. So, as you guys can see, having four-wheel drive, albeit it's not the 4x4 with the transfer case and low range, this kind of a system definitely helps when you're driving on the snow. We saw how useful the four-wheel drive system is to set off in the snow on these slippery conditions, but the truth is you're probably not going to be drag racing your friend's Skoda Superb in the snow. What's really useful for the four-wheel drive is driving on open country lanes or snowy tracks like this, if you're in the countryside and or your driveway and things like that. So first, I like to put my seat up a little bit higher when I'm going off-road, and especially in the snow, because everything is just white. It's hard to see where the track ends, and if there's obstacles on the side, it's always more useful to sit up a little bit higher. Once that is done, I also would like to, you know, make sure the steering wheel is further closer to my chest so that I can make quick turns a lot more easily. Another good part about the Skoda Karoq is these fairly thin A-pillars. I mean, comparatively, they're not that big, so I have really good visibility on the corners as well, albeit the rear view mirrors
are kind of obstructing this view, but overall it's pretty good. Windscreen is also large, tall windows, and a big windshield in the back also means that I have good visibility out the rear. All that said, let's put it in drive. Let's click on the mode button and put it in snow. Now in the snow mode, the all-wheel drive system is engaged, and the steering wheel is fairly light. Throttle response is a little bit dulled, but what's important is the traction control system allows a little bit of slippage so that you can actually gain a little bit more traction on the snow. Having too much of intervention for wheel slip in the snow doesn't really help. You need to be able to spin it. In fact, we've already been driving on this off-road course earlier in the snow course, and at one point of time even that's not enough, and I will tell you what happens then. But on the whole, right now, this is not really that challenging. I'm sure you could do this in a front-wheel drive car as well. The engine also, because this is the diesel engine, the 190 horsepower 2-liter TDI, has plenty of torque low down, so it gives you good control, especially since you're driving very slowly. You have a lot of that power early on in the rev range, so that's when you really need it the most, when you're going off-road. Steering is actually really communicative. Even though it's a little bit light, it's still got some feedback to it. It's not so numb, which is something I always like. I kind of complained about the Skoda Octavia's steering system last time I drove it because I felt it was too numb and soft in the middle, but this system is much better. So like for example right here, we need to give it a lot more gas, and seems like we're stuck a little bit. Now I'm going to put it in off-road mode, turn off the traction control completely, then use the throttle to get us unstuck a little bit, like so. And as you guys can see, this is quite a challenging section. This is a real test for the all-wheel drive system. Put it in drive and really give it a lot of gas now. Whoa, there we go. See, in this situation you really need to allow it to slip. For that we will, like I said, I use the traction control button over here, and one click deactivates the stability control, but if you hold it down, wait, let me try again. Now it's activated. I hold it down, traction control is deactivated, then after a couple seconds the ESC is now also in sport mode. With the off-road mode, I also have the symbol for the hill descent control that we see over here. So like for example right now, it's very useful. I have my feet off the pedals and the car is maintaining traction by using the braking, individually braking the wheels with the most traction, using engine braking, and using all of these systems to, and the four-wheel drive of course, to maintain a controlled descent. And in the off-road mode, there is a significant difference between snow mode and off-road mode, I can already tell you. The steering is actually even a lot more lighter than it was in snow mode. The engine holds, one gear for a very long time. Like right now, it's revving up all the way to 2,500 RPM, and it just shifted up to D2. So this also means that you don't have to worry about the gearbox shifting up in the middle of a very tricky situation or a tricky hill. So I actually think the off-road mode for serious snow driving is actually much more useful. And I think we have to go left here now. Yeah. Yes. Jonas, my co-pilot. All right. Deep snow ruts over here. Quick corrections on the steering wheel to keep it pointing in the right direction. Really balancing the throttle. So that also shows that this all-wheel drive, this traction control is also not completely turned off because it's still limited. I'm really trying to push it harder. I'm using the throttle to spin the wheels a little bit. There we go. But it's still cutting in a little bit, but I think that's okay. You don't really need to have the traction control completely off. I'm going to try to maintain a little bit more momentum on these sections because we had some fresh powder and it's quite a loose surface. But it's, it's kind of a four-wheel drive system. While it might not be for true off-road enthusiasts. You know, if you think you're going to be in this kind of a situation driving on snowy tracks like this, you would definitely need it. It's not possible to do this in a front-wheel drive car. You would have been stuck quite a long time ago, all the way back there. And now we're coming up to a really fun obstacle. If you can see over here in the front, we have a fairly large and fairly steep hill. So let's see. I want to make sure I have it in off-road mode. I do. I want to make sure that the traction control is off and the ESC is off. That it is. I'm going to take a nice run up. Reversing camera helping me out very nicely to make sure I don't get off the track. There we go. Now the car's going to make some alarming sounds. Don't worry, I'm not going to break it, but turn off the auto shut off and turn off the park assist. All right, here we go. Give it some gas, keep the momentum, use that to climb over to the top of the hill. Voila, easy. And it's a fairly steep downhill as well, but again, feet completely off. The hill descent control is using its braking and four-wheel drive and engine braking to maintain a very controlled, easy, steady descent. Let's face it, this is again probably the most amount of off-roading in the snow that you would do. And you saw that it is fairly capable. You shouldn't really be pushing its limits, but if you use the off-road mode, if you're really in a sticky situation, you need to turn off the traction control and the ESC, and you need to be able to modulate the throttle manually. And with these systems and the extra ride height that you do get with the Karoq being an SUV, it is very easy to go off on these situations, in these off-road situations. One thing before I forget is you do not have DCC in this car, so that also shows that without the DCC in the regular suspension setup, it's already quite capable, and you don't really need a stiff suspension either. So yeah, perhaps you don't really need the DCC in this case. Now we're driving the grey Skoda Karoq with the digital instrument cluster, the digital cockpit, which I can already tell you it's pretty good. I mean, I can zoom in to have the full navigation with the speed, so this is very easy while somebody else uses the touch screen. So anyway, this car also has the same engine that we were driving off-road with. That is the 2-liter TDI with the, I think it's called the ACR, not ACR. It has basically that AdBlue additive which helps reduce the NOx emissions. This also has the 7-speed DSG and the all-wheel drive system. Like I said earlier, the all-wheel drive system is a electronic operated unit on the rear axle with a wet multi-plate clutch. And when the system recognizes that there is slippage in the front wheels, then the clutch engages and thus transfers torque to the rear wheels as well, and making it all-wheel drive. But the front axle never gets decoupled, so it's always at max 50-50 power distribution. But on the road like this, you really don't need it. So that way it's really cool, because you don't have to worry about changing it from low-high to low 4 to high 2 or any of the regular things which would be in a traditional transfer case. This is completely automatic. When you need the off-road, when you need the four-wheel drive when you're going off-road like we were doing in the snow, it kicks in automatically. And when you don't need it, like right now, it's just front-wheel drive, and hence it's a lot more efficient. Apart from that, let's see. Let's start with comfort. This car has the regular suspension, doesn't have the DCC or the dynamic chassis control, so there is no adaptive dampers. There's just the regular dampers, and I can already tell you that it's really comfortable. The Skoda Karoq is in between the Tiguan and the Ateca, so it's set up to be more comfortable and less sporty than an Ateca, and it's a little bit smaller than the Tiguan. So it's kind of right in the middle in terms of comfort, size, and agility, or let's say dynamic handling. So it's a good mix. The steering also has a really good weight to it. There is not really much of a dead center. It's really sharp and reacts really well. Of course, on long winding roads like this in Finland, I'm not really able to test the corner carving ability of the Karoq, so we will try to see if we can do that later. You can also watch Thomas's review, like I said earlier, where he's done a little bit of the agile driving. Let's see, apart from that, there is a little bit of noise in the cabin. It's the wind and the tire noise, but I would say the tire noise I can really attribute to the fact that we're driving on really what are these tires? These are the off-road snow tires, winter tires rather, with the studs, the metal studs. So because of the studded tire, it's making a little bit more road noise than perhaps a regular winter tire or a summer tire would. And I'm gonna, consider that being the reason for this tire noise. But wind insulation is not bad. It's fairly good. Even though we have a big panoramic sunroof, it's really well insulated for the most part. Again, considering the fact that this is cheaper than the Tiguan, I think it's a really good buy. The interior, I think, is a little bit, well, when you're driving, it's not really exciting. There are some LED strips of light along the dashboard, along the top of the door, but even though we do have the headlight on, you can't really see any of that, and it doesn't really become that bright, so it doesn't really liven up the interior. I think it's too black. I think you would be better if you choose some lighter colors in the upholstery. Then it will really make this cabin feel a lot more fresh and inviting. The Karoq also has a whole host of assistance systems, blind spot monitoring, lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control, cross traffic alert. You also have automatic park in and park out with the button over here. And yeah, it's all very common. It's very something that we've seen on the rest of the VW group cars. The Ateca has it, the Leon has it, the Golf has it, the Octavia has it. They all have it. So these are, in that way, tried and trusted, really well established driver assistance systems. The seats are also fairly comfortable. They're nice and wide. They're supportive. They're not that soft that it's really squishy. They're not that firm that it's hard and uncomfortable. So I think it also strikes a good balance. You have plenty of adjustments. So on the whole, on the highway, I think the Skoda Karoq is pretty good. Back by popular demand, we have Ask Jonas What He Thinks segment of today's review of the Skoda Karoq. So, Jonas, how are you going on back there?
Quite fine. I don't know. I brought my camera to show you how much leg space there's left, and it's you see, I'm a tall guy. I'm 1.93 meters, but as you can see, there's not so much space left. Actually, this table, you can pop out this table. You see, it's kind of
so not
really possible to pull out the table. Okay.
Well, does this car also have the VarioFlex seats? Can you slide back and forth?
Let me check.
There must be a lever under the seat base.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because right now we are driving upwards, but in general I move. No, it's working. Yeah.
Yeah. But how do you have seat heaters, right? So maybe you can tell everybody how that works. Is it taking a long time to heat up, or is it?
Yeah, we can check this right now. As you can see, I can press the seat heater. I got 3 different steps, and I don't know. Let's wait some time and see when it gets warm. Yeah. But in general, it's a nice idea to also bring it in the back.
Yeah, very useful, especially in cold countries, and like here in Finland, especially in the winter. Talking about Finland in the winter, this road is very beautiful, but it's completely covered in snow. Maybe, Jonas, you can show the viewers out front how it looks like. It's very beautiful, but it's quite bumpy because the snow is not packed down completely in places. There's chunks of ice here and there. In the front, it's the car is handling really nicely. I mean, even though there is no, like I said, DCC, the standard suspension setup is already very comfortable. I'm also driving the car in comfort mode. I can change it to individual, and then here I have multiple different options. So steering, drive, which would be the transmission, adaptive cruise control, dynamic corner lighting, all this stuff. So, I mean, if I put it in normal mode, there is no change in the suspension, but I think in the front it's fairly nice. What about back there? Does it seem quite bumpy? Are you being jostled around, or is it fairly compliant?
Actually, the comfort is really good. I was expecting much less, because actually I was sitting in the front, and it really feels like you're sitting in the front. Yeah, not because of the size. The size, there's way less space, of course, but it's not bumpy. It's really comfortable. It's quiet.
Do you think 3 people of your height could fit in the back seat? So basically, can somebody your size sit in the middle? Maybe you can shift to the middle, and or to try to shift to the middle seat and see how you feel.
Let's try this.
Yeah.
Okay, as you may see now, it's really narrow.
Yeah.
So this would be possible if you want to drive to McDonald's 2 kilometers, you know, but on a longer trip it's definitely not possible. Also, like my height,
the head,
my head space is like
really bad.
2 centimeters. It's really narrow. So you're really sitting much higher in the middle row. So
really, because when I sat there in the middle, it didn't seem to be that tall. But of course, you know, I am 5'8", and how tall are you? You're 6 foot something.
1 meter 93.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for your insight, Jonas. I think the Karoq is definitely a lot more spacious than the Ateca. It's just a little bit smaller than the Tiguan, and Skodas generally have more practicality. They're more practicality oriented. But for a small family, I think it's definitely a good choice, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I also think it's more space than you would expect from the outside. But actually, as we just talked about headroom, the headroom also on the left side is, for me, is like there isn't really headroom. I'm like touching the roof.
Right?
Yeah.
So headroom in the back is an issue for slightly taller passengers. So just keep that in mind if you are interested in buying this car, that it could be a potential problem. Let's summarize today's drive of the Skoda Karoq. With prices starting at around 25,000 euros and going all the way up to 38,000 euros, I think it's still a very reasonable option for people who don't want a large Tiguan and don't like the slightly stiffer suspension and more sporty outlook of the Seat Ateca. The Karoq sits in perfectly right in between the two, with a more plush ride compared to the Ateca, but a little bit larger than that as well, but not as expensive and as big as the Tiguan. On the other side, I think the design is a bit too bland. I would have liked a little bit more flair to the design. I think the Ateca and for example, the Tiguan R-Line in that sense are a lot more appealing to look at, but that's just a personal taste. And while we know the drivetrain and the engines from the rest of the VW group, the 2-liter diesel that I was driving today did feel a little bit grumbly at times. But I'm really just nitpicking here. It's hard to fault a car like the Skoda Karoq. Again, as long as you know what it's meant for. We saw that the 4-wheel drive system also really helps out when you're driving in the snow. It's not really an off-roader, it's more of a rough roader or a soft roader, but definitely in the snow, this really helps out. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think. Put it down in the comments below. And make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well. For example, just last night, Jonas and I were live streaming on Instagram. So people were sending us questions and we were addressing the questions in today's review. Plus we can just hang out, talk to each other about cars. It's a lot of fun. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, follow us on Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time.